Welcome to the Southern Connection podcast. My name is Adam Luke. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I am blessed to have a co-host who's also a licensed marriage and family therapist. Who is this co-host?
I am Jeff Ortiz, licensed marriage and family therapist in the state of California, soon to be Tennessee, like my brother from another mother.
I love it. I love it. So, guys, gals, if you have not had a chance to listen to our podcast before, let me give you a quick introduction on why you should pay attention or why you should even be listening. So the Southern Connection podcast, Jeff and I came up with this idea of we have sat together, we've worked as colleagues, and we've come up with the fact that our niche in life is relationships. And so we are the relational experts. And so we've created this podcast to help people realize how important relational aspects of life are. And the reason why is because right now you can hop on Instagram, any social media, and you can find people telling you how to X your income, how to make more money, how to live a lavish lifestyle. But what they won't sell you or what they can't provide you is the knowledge or awareness of the relationships it takes to make a sale, to build a team, to build an empire, to have a family, to have a good quality support system. Because no matter where the money comes from, if you don't have a quality support system, if you don't have yourself devoted to your family, and if you don't know how to work with your employees, this house of cards is going to come down. So that's what the Southern Connection podcast is about. Today, our topic is we're branching off of the last podcast, which was Stressed Out Part 1. Now you're going, stressed out? What the heck? Well, this is where we're coming from. People are starting to wear stress as a fake badge of honor. They say they're busy. They say it's the humble brag. We've all heard it, right? Oh, I got this and I got that, and I'm on my third job and I have an internship and I'm going back to school and I am just busy, distracted, and unaware of the terminal velocity I'm moving at. What we want to break it down on is the fact that if you don't learn how to manage your stress will manage you. And it's increasing these awarenesses that gives us that superpower to be relatable, to be experienced as genuine, and to be likable. So, Jeff, where do we go from here?
Yeah, my favorite term is, I'm hustling. I'm making that money, making that paper. It's like, yeah, when I hear people say they're hustling, I'm like, man, okay, shoot, what does that look like for you? A lot of people that I know that use that terminology is that they're seeking something bigger, which is great. I'm all about that. Whether it be financially, educationally, professionally, whatever that looks like. But on the other side of hustling, what does life look like? That's where we come in, right? And so it's really trying to nail down, how people are being relational in their hustle. It is one thing to be, a hustler, but if you're just narrow-minded, focused in that tunnel vision, but you're not utilizing the resources around you, the relationships around you, making those connections, you're going to see real quick that, that hustle is going to turn into depleted self really quick, and so it's just a matter of slowing down and recognizing, have that awareness of what does hustling mean? Is it giving me external validation, right? Absolutely. And does this stress and this hustle, is this giving me a validation? Like, yeah, see, I'm proving my worth. Man, I'll tell you, I've worked with quite a few individuals and couples that are hustling, and they're caught up in the craziness of life. But at the end of the day, they don't know who they are. They have no idea. And so they're just kind of like, well, I do these things. Okay, it's great. But who are you in that process? And I think that's where, being the relational experts is kind of mining that field of, okay, who are you and what do you bring to the table aside from being really good at doing this or doing that, and enhancing relationships so they can even build that empire bigger that you mentioned. So, whatever that empire looks like.
Well, yeah. And, it's funny because I'll say empire and some of the people I work with are in rural communities. It's like, well, I'm looking to have a 1,500 goat farm, head of goat farm. You have other people that I've worked with and it's, their life is found in 10,000 chickens. And it's like, and so when you say empire, they kind of chuckle at themselves. But the fact is you are building a legacy. You are building an empire.
Mhm.
Okay. It may not look like you're going to own a building in New York, but
Yeah.
you are leaving something that's going to grow further and feed your generations down the road. I loved
Yeah.
how you were talking about hustling, because something that we don't talk about is whether it's hustling or just, if you want to say, success, um, it's isolating. And so
Mm.
people are like, well, what do you mean isolating? Because when I got money in my pocket, I got people around me, I can go to the bar, I can go out to fancy restaurants, I can do all this. Well, no, when we lock in to hustling, into that mindset of success, so we're pouring in all of our time and effort to make something get off the ground. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't be disciplined and devoted to whatever you are growing, a brand, a business, whatnot. But when we do that, we normally do it to the detriment of our relationships. We
Yeah.
stop reaching out to our family. We stop talking to our wives. We stop talking to our loved ones. We stop communicating in a relational aspect with individuals that might help us, even our own employees, right? Because we're so focused on just getting the money in the door or just getting this next sale that we forget the investments that are made relationally in between that. You know,
Mhm.
I used to work with a gentleman that he owns four car dealerships in California. And he said the hardest thing for him to get his sales reps to understand was that at the moment a person shows up, you're not necessarily selling that car. You're selling the experience of what it's like to come to me. Am I trustworthy? Am
Yeah.
I able to listen to you? Is it because it would be interesting? People would try to sell people cars that they didn't need, didn't want. They said, hey, I have this need and I'm not meeting that. I'm just saying, well, I make the best commission off this car, so why don't you buy this car? And it wasn't working out. People would flounder. He goes, then you'd have people that they would spend time with these customers coming in, and all of a sudden the customer might come in, look 2-3 times, walk away. And so other sales reps wouldn't come out and look at it with these people. They're just like, oh,
Yeah.
whatever, they're tire kickers. Until boom, one guy comes back and goes, you know what? Yeah, you spent 3 times I've been here with you. Let me buy that car from you. So this is the dynamic that we're talking about, because I want people to be successful financially, but I don't want that to be at the detriment of their families.
Mhm.
And the way that you treat people at work is how you're going to treat people in your family. And so it
Mhm.
comes back to, how do we manage the stress? Because again, when I can just relate to what I've done. If I know that I'm stressed out at work and I come home and I'm silent, I'm moody, I'm grumpy, I can completely remove any joy that exists in my house. It's gone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's not just for me, that's other people in this home.
Right.
And you have to then look at, what are you doing if you have battles at work? Then you come home and you end up lighting all these additional fires in your sanctuary.
Mhm. Yeah, one of the things that before I got into marriage and family therapy, I was in the construction industry, and as a HVAC technician, heating,
Mm,
ventilation, air conditioning, and I'd run into several different types of individuals on a daily, weekly basis. Contractors that were looking to get jobs done yesterday. It's always
mm,
yesterday, and it's a lot of fires to put out. Anyway, just to all that to say that there were different personalities, and dealing with that adversity and those types of relationships. I mean, professionally, I had to deal with them. I had to do the work. But personally, I had to learn not to take that personal, and
mm,
being able to kind of ground myself from the time I left the job site to the time I got home, so that way my family is not getting those interactions, those tough interactions that I had with contractors throughout the day, and then fighting the traffic to get home, and being available and present to them. I'm not going to say it took a long time to get to that point. It took many years to, one, have the awareness and recognize that was an issue,
mm,
right? So that's hopefully something we do through this podcast. And then two, dealing with it on my drive home, or
mm.
if I couldn't resolve it on the drive home, um, you know, when I got home within the first 15-20 minutes, kind of just let my wife know, hey, look, I need to do this, I need to do that, kind of just reset the mood and really figure out, okay, how am I going to show up for my family? And I think a lot of times people, they're there, but they're not showing up. And showing up, in my opinion, is different, because when you show up, then you're going to show out, and you're going to show that individual who loves them and wants to be there for them. And you're going to do these things, these quality things that make your family thrive. But when you're just there and you're just a shell of yourself, you know, you're not connected, or you're extra, you know, emotionally reactive, and you know, there's a lot of negative things coming out from that. So it's really recognizing, hey, all these interactions throughout the day have a tendency to kind of bring out this individual that I don't necessarily like, or these, you know, these feelings or these emotions that are, you know, unresolved. And, you know, how am I gonna address those throughout the day? So then I'm available, you know, and then you can work on the relationships that, you know, within work and that sort of thing too. So, and I really feel like it's just going back to not taking things personal, you know, because business is one thing. And when you're working with other individuals that have an expectation and you don't meet that expectation, chances are they're going, you know, there's going to be some feelings there, and you're going to pick up on it. But it's not a personal, you know, response to you. Business is business, right? And so, you know, that's a whole different thing. But recognizing that, yes, we have these stressors, we have these things going on in our lives that play a role in everything we do, and figuring out, okay, how are we going to manage them? How do we manage it? How do we go from, you know, this interaction to that interaction and to this interaction? But the biggest interaction that you and I know, you know, we both feel strongly about is the interactions that we have at home, right? And that's where we want to start, is like, hey, like, you can have all these things, you can have all this success, but what is it really when you don't have that connection at home? You know, and we see very successful individuals in different walks of life, but when it comes down to it, they're like, I'll put my head on the pillow and I'm wondering why I'm doing this. And
Absolutely.
that's the challenge.
Well, because again, do not think that you can trade, you cannot trade memories for materials.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times we wrestle with that. You said it earlier in this podcast. People attribute their value as an individual to the success that they have in business. I'm worth 6 figures if I'm making 6 figures. I'm worth 7 figures if I make 7 figures.
Yeah.
If you tie your value as a person to the paycheck you are receiving, you will always find yourself upset, frustrated, and unable to reconcile expectations with realities. Because the fact is, some of the best wealth a man can have is stuff that he cannot buy. And so a lot of people go, well, what do you mean, Yoda? Well, what I'm talking about is the fact that you, at the end of the day, no matter how much money you've amassed, if you don't have the love of your spouse and the love and admiration of your children, like you said, what did you do this for? Was I just this terminal success story? Well, I got all this and I died and the money came out. And I think when I was trying to conceptualize where we're going to take part 2, I was going to an experience I had once where a mentor of mine passed away about 4 years ago. I went to their funeral. And, you know, at funerals, they always say, does anyone have anything extra to say? And so people were coming out of the crowds and we're speaking. And I remember this gentleman's son leaning over to me and saying, and it wrecked me, I wish I knew that, Dad. Now, what I'm talking about is the fact that the people that had worked with this gentleman saw a kinder, more loving, more relational individual than his own family. And it wrecked me because I had been sort of sitting around being like, well, I'm being mentored by this dude that's making a ton of money. He's been very successful. He's got a boat and multiple houses and blah, blah, blah. And it was in that moment that he taught me his best lesson without actually being able to talk. Because what that means is this man who had built a lot took home stress in a very different way. And so with all those immense pressures on him, even though he was successful and he always found a way to get it done, he didn't talk to his kids the way that he would have wanted to be experienced. And I hope and pray that I never reach that spot where my kids think that the people I do business with get more of my attention than they do. And again, we have to raise up our awareness. And our awareness is, how do I invest at home? Because if you treat your job as an 8 or 12-hour job, and then you come home and you treat that as downtime, you don't deliberately put time and effort into it, then you're going to get the dividends of that investment. You don't put any money into the stock market, you don't get any money out. Same way with emotional currency.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I'm hearing you say that and share that story, and I think about, the people we've worked with, the people we've been experienced, just life experience. They don't have to be work. Nobody wants to show up that way. If you ask them, nobody's going to want to show up and be like, yeah, I did all this for my work family, but when I came home, I gave them nothing. Like, nobody wants that. But on the flip side, do they have that awareness of these things actually contributing to the lack of the connection that they have at home? Right? Are they pausing and actually asking the questions of, am I giving my family the best? And at what, is this the sacrifice that I pay? No, I'm going to tell you no. The answer is no. You don't have to sacrifice your family for financial wealth. You do not, period. I don't care who, no, you don't. And so if you don't, then it's like, okay, well, where do I start? And that's a beautiful place to be, because that's when you start asking those types of questions, that's when change starts to begin. And so, it's really, like we've talked about before, and I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but it's pausing and critically being aware of, okay, what is changing in me? What am I unhappy with? Those times when you're driving on the road, or you're out for a walk, or you're just doing something, you're just like, dang, man, I wish I could just fix that. I wish I could really work on that part of me. If you're asking, the right questions, or if you're doing any sort of self-help type work, these things come up. And so it's really, that's where the awareness starts. Is okay, these things start coming up, and I want to be more available for my family. Because when it's all said and done, we're going to pass away. And like what Adam said is, we're probably going to have a funeral. What is going to be spoken about us? We have a beginning date, we have an end date, right? On our headstones, and that dash is going to come up at our funeral. And so how will people speak about us? And they're going to speak about the relationships we had with them. They're not going to talk about, well, I remember he had this boat, he had this car, he had this house, he did this deal and that deal. They're not going to talk about that. They're going to talk about how you showed up in their life. And that's what's important. And if it's your kids, if it's your spouse, if it's, a relative of some sort, somebody in the community, a neighbor, how are they going to speak about you? That, in my opinion, that's what's important. Because one day we're all going to die. And it's like, okay, am I going to let the stress control me? Or am I going to manage the stress and be who I was always created to be, and continue to be relational with people and love people? Love myself, because if you don't love yourself, not out of being vain, not out of selfishness, but love yourself, the good parts and the bad parts, so that way you know how to love others better. Because if you love yourself well, you're going to love others well. And so it's kind of growing through that and learning how to do that. Because stress will always be there. You and I know that. We knew that back in grad school. We know that now. We have families. We're trying to support our spouses and loved ones and our kids. And it's like, okay, stress will always be there. That's never going to go away. Never going to subside.
And how do we work through it? And don't set yourself up for failure by hoping that stress will go away. Your prayer for yourself should be that you have the strength to take on the challenges you experience every day.
Yeah.
Because if you do it from that mindset, then when stress shows up, I don't start just wallowing around like a rug rat. Oh my God, here it is. Nope, it was going to come. It was going to show up. Now, the next thing, because I can hear this sort of ringing in my ear, is, well, that's all fine and dandy, guys, but what is stress?
Yeah.
Because by just saying stress is bad, don't put it in your life. Well, that's great. How do I identify it? How do I take those initial steps of gaining power back in my own life? I love to say, how do I put my voice back into my own life? And so the way that for me has been the easiest to notice when stress is showing up is to sort of, I call it my third ear. I pay attention to things that are said around me, because guess what? Your loved ones, they'll kick it off first and they'll start saying stuff like, oh, you're going back to the office again. Oh, you're doing, how's the easiest way it's been framed to me lately? I can tell, I've been told, I can tell you're really stressed. Or I've had people say, oh, well, should I give you more time? I'll come back. It's a better time. Without me even saying a word. I'm a therapist. That rings a different bell inside of me. If people can take my temperature walking into the room after a hard day in sessions. And guess what? I need to pay attention to that, because they're not saying it to dig under my skin. They're not saying it to be derogatory. It's easy to take it that way. Well, you know what? I saw blank, blank, blank number of clients, or I had this, or I had a deal that didn't go through. We can sit here and justify and make excuses and make them sound really good, because guess what? We're the best liars to ourselves. We will sell ourselves a bill of goods every day of the week if it'll make us feel better about our lack of presence in our own life. And so it comes to paying attention to that. It's also paying attention to what I brought up in the part one, was really my anxiety and where I'm at. If I start eating crap food, why am I eating crap food, dude? Why is it 3 o'clock and all of a sudden I'm like, man, an old fashioned sounds good right now.
Yeah.
Or like,
right.
and everyone likes to joke around with it, but seriously, there's a side of it that we have to pay attention to, because guess what? I'm transferring that energy into more self-destructive choices. Maladaptive coping skills is how one supervisor told me. You're taking one and you're just pushing into the other. You're graduating into other things. So now instead of just having a stress problem, I have a weight problem. Instead of just having this, I have something else. And we brought it up. No one ever wakes up and is like, I can't wait to cheat on my wife or cheat on my loved one. But guess what? They happen. Why? Because we took that nervous energy, we took stress, we took all these other factors, and you know what? There was a fantasy in being pursued by someone else. There's a fantasy in chasing someone else. When really I get into that, I destroy my life in a different way. I still haven't solved my original problem, which is I don't know how to handle stress.
Yeah.
And so the hardest part of how do I define stress? It's like dieting. You have to actually pay attention. You have to track it. And so sometimes it's taking your own temperature. Sometimes when something bad happens, a deal goes sideways, you have a conversation you do not feel at all comfortable about. It's not about just picking up the phone and texting who you can go to the bar with or how you can distract yourself with something else. It's going, well, how did that make me feel? And people will sit back, and especially men, we were not socially allowed the space to have that emotional process. We're supposed to just suck it up, rub some dirt in it, and move on. All we end up with is a festering wound and more problems. And so stress, believe it or not, your body will tell you. If you start to get tightness in your chest, if you have at times like you get off the phone, you feel your heart's coming out of your chest, if you feel like, dude, I just want to crawl into bed and go to sleep, when your buddy calls up and actually does have like, hey, let's go to the Angels game or let's go to whatever. And it's like, no, dude, I'd rather just stay home and mope. This is your body telling you that you're going through something. Now you can choose to listen to it, or you'll have to wait till it's finally yelling at you and there's additional problems.
Yeah, I've always found that the body is a great tool to listen to, because it doesn't lie, right? And I mean, there's a book written on that. And so it's a matter of really gauging, okay, what, am I tense? Am I tight? Am I becoming defensive? Do I want to fight? It's like, what is my body telling me that my mind's already told my body and I need to go back up from my body to check my mind. I need to go back up. See, your body is in response to sort of triggers, and so that fight, flight, freeze responses. And so as you're getting triggered throughout the day, you feel the tension in your body, and you hear people, they have knots in their back and their necks tight, and they're carrying their stress because they're not working through and managing it and releasing that toxic energy that is being brought up in all their interactions throughout the day. So when we're taking the temperature, taking the body temperature, it's like, okay, well, where am I carrying it? Where am I feeling it? My supervisor at the time, Chris Williams, talked about, we carry it from the chin to the belly button. So somewhere in there, we carry this stress. And so it's like, okay, where am I carrying it? And how is it being projected? How is it being played out? Am I taking it out on my family? And I always say, let's not go take it out on the family. Let's really gauge where it is. That's the awareness. And then how can we unpack it so we're available? And so that's when I gave the explanation of being at work and then drive home. During that drive home, that's how I would just work on unpacking it. I would listen to classical music, believe it or not. I listened to classical music and I would just enjoy, but whether I was in traffic, I didn't care. But what I was doing is unpacking the stress of the day. So that way, by the time I got home, I was available. Now, that is not easy to do, especially if you have not worked on it, if you've not worked with a professional to figure out how to unpack it. So I say that, but I also know there's a lot of work that goes into it. But that it's a true example of how we unpack things and figuring out that, okay, I'm not going to bring this home because I feel triggered and I feel my body, and I want to be available for my family. And so it comes back to a value, right? Do you want to be known as the individual who brings love and compassion, empathy, to your family, and real understanding and validation? Or do you want to come home and be that one person who, just negatively emotionally reacts and word vomits on their family and tells them how terrible they are and just so, pessimistic and critical and negative, and it's like, if you know me, you know my life experience. And so, I saw that growing up, and then I became that. And then I had to figure out, how do I stop that? So I say these things because I've been there. I've carried the stress. I've projected onto my family. And then I realized, I'm like, I need to change that stuff. And so it wasn't until I got to the point of how much value is it going to bring me? Right? What's going to be the significance of me changing?
Yep.
Am I going to have better relationship with my boys? Am I going to have a better relationship with my spouse? Am I going to have better relationships with the people I work with? Am I going to have better relationships with those in my community, at my church, whatever it looks like? Am I really projecting the person that I know and believe that I am? And so it's like, we get to that point and it's recognizing, okay, do I want to keep living like this? My experience was going through a divorce, and that fork in the road. I could have continued being the same guy. I really could have. But I chose, I knew that there was more. And I knew that there was things that I didn't unpack, stress related, relationally related, family related, that I didn't unpack and I didn't work through, that I needed to work through. So then I can be that man that I always have known that was in there, but I rejected. And I rejected because I was scared. And I was afraid of what people would think of me.
It's a place of vulnerability.
Right? Back to that dang word, vulnerability. But, it's just being authentic and showing up, right? Because you talked about being the hero of our story. Well, a hero at his truest point is going to show his vulnerability. He's going to show that he cares and he has compassion, or she has compassion. And it's like, okay, what does that look like? How does that show up? And it's crazy to think, because we just think, okay, go out and fight, right? Because we're based on all these movies. It's like, sometimes the fight is not even external to where people can see it and applaud it. The fight is done in the ground, on the ground, in the trenches, like when nobody's watching.
Yep.
Or when it's just you and another professional, a therapist like us, like you're doing the work and you're fighting, you got these things going on. Nobody can see it. Nobody can applaud you. Nobody's going to celebrate you. Only you know that these things are happening and that you're working on these things. And there's going to be times where you're doing the work and your family's like, you ain't doing the work. And you're like, I'm doing the work. And you're like, no, it's still messy. It's still ugly. And it's true. That part is true. But you got to remember, they're so accustomed and used to you being a certain way that it's going to take them time to see the transition too. Just continue to believe that, okay, you're doing this for a reason, for a bigger purpose, for a greater purpose, for you to have that connection with them. So that way the stress doesn't manage you, you manage the stress. The stress can never, if the second the stress runs you, you're done. I'm done. You're done. Everybody's done. But when you're able to manage and compartmentalize and break it down into simple, practical steps of like areas of your life, relationships in your life, manage them, finance, everything, manage it. And then you start to recognize you have more power and control than you've ever thought possible.
Well, I can't help, like, as you were talking about that, like 99% of what you do, well, you didn't say it this way, but this is how I conceptualized it. The things that you do that no one's around, it's 99% of the time going to be the most important work you have ever done. Because here's the deal. I can very easily say, you know what, I'm going to set it up so that I always get applauded. Well, that's great. Eat healthy in front of your friends. Woohoo. Guess what? You spend, hundreds of hours away from people during the week? And so what? You're just going to show up a couple hours a week to be applauded, to get the high five, to you close this deal, whatever. But in all those other aspects, you weren't actually present. And it goes back to, again, the part one, when I was talking about trust. Individuals do not trust anxious, disingenuous people. Yeah. And when we have stress ruling our lives, sort of pulling the puppet strings on us, we don't look approachable. Yeah. Someone calls you and all of a sudden, wow, that person was kind of curt. That person was kind of different than the last time I experienced them. Or I felt like rushed away. I felt like, I don't know, there felt like a space there, like there was a wall. There's something you didn't want to get to me. So the words, I'm fine and I can handle it, those are the phrases that are essentially the opening flares to forest fires when it comes to relational work. Because what we're doing is we're dismissing the fact that our body is telling ourselves something, and we're dismissing the fact that people are starting to notice it. The phrase, are you okay, is not an admonishment to you. It's not someone saying, oh, you're not worthy enough. Sometimes that's actually a phrase that's asked honestly. You need something? And when we turn to our support system again and slap them in the face and say, I'm fine, guess what? There's going to be less of that relational support the next time I need it. Because you are essentially conditioning the people around your life that I don't need you. I'm fine. And it's this mentality that sets us on that terminal velocity. I always talk about space and opportunity. It's just something I just bring in because it helped me visualize so much what relational aspects look like. So if you're telling me that you want to have a better family life, you want to have more joy in your life, you want to have happiness, and you never create the space for that, and you say my joy and happiness is going to be found in how new my car is, how big my house is, how many vacations I go on, you are never going to be able to keep up with your expectation. And 2020 was the big grounder for all of us, because individuals who had always been able to go vacation, to get something new, to have money come in, to always, whatever that was, always be out fine dining, whatever it was, all of a sudden we had to actually sit in our big old homes with nothing to do, with the inability to brag, and we had to find out, do we like ourselves? A lot of people ended up saying, I don't like myself. And there's where the depression and the other anxiety comes in. Yeah. What am I doing to myself? And the best part of this is we're not here to be Debbie Downers. We're here to tell you that this is all fixable. Yep. It's not going to be easy, but it's fixable. And what we know about relationships is it's not the fact that you may have been an ass at one point in your life in this relationship. It's how you repair it.
Yep.
And it's when kids and when wives and when husbands turn around and go, well, yeah, I did see a difference. I remember when this happened. I remember when you started doing your own work. I remember they read this book and they really started putting it together. You know, I had that experience with a different friend that he read the book by Viktor Frankl, A Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah. It's a phenomenal book. It is not an easy read, but it's small. So it's nice in that regard. But essentially what happened was this individual started putting it into their life, the themes that he got out of the book. And his wife will talk about it. I saw it. All of a sudden, you know, he was more present with the kids, and not because I asked him to go play with his kids.
Yeah.
All of a sudden he was more present with me, not because I said, can we have a date night? And so the thing with stress is we isolate, we stop reaching out, we stop connecting because we're so focused on how we get that next deal done or the next dollar or whatever. And then all of a sudden we realize we've alienated the best things around us. And so stress, I want you to think of it in this way as well. I was a great talk where an anthropologist broke it down this way. He has spent 30 years watching animals in Africa. And he said, you know, I see a problem with human beings. And he says, this is what I see. He says, I see a gazelle walk through the Sahara. Gazelle's walking around, no problem, feeding. It's having a good old time. All of a sudden, a lion shows up, right? The gazelle runs like hell, gets away from the lion. And he goes, and then you can see 15 minutes later, this gazelle is back to normal. He's eating his grasses, sipping his water, whatever, right? Sipping his water like he's got a Starbucks cup. Anyways, but then he goes, here's the problem with human beings. Human beings, we're sitting around, our instinct goes off, oh man, I shouldn't be in this place. I don't feel safe. I don't like being here. And we continue to go to that work, that job for 20 plus years. Yeah. And we build the stress up and we put all this additional concern on us. Because guess what? Our blood pressure's up. Why is it up? Because our body is telling us to run, to go. And what do? We decide to just sit in it because I'm not going to listen to my body. I'm fine. This isn't that bad. I'm miserable though. And so we relationally start killing ourselves. And the most concerning aspect of that is our body cannot hide it. Our body takes a beating with us. And so we have heart problems. We have, you go down the list. All of a sudden our bodies fall apart. Why? Because we're not listening to them. So guess what? Next time that you're having interaction with someone and you're like, man, I got a weird feeling on that. That person didn't seem that safe or that genuine or whatever. Listen to yourself. Because stress normally happens when I don't listen to my own instincts and I over leverage myself. And now I have concern and I have anxiety because I never felt good about the deal, the person, or the place to begin with.
Yeah, it goes back to the awareness, right? And being able to know that these things are occurring and, you know, and recognizing, okay, all these interactions, all these people that I'm connected with and then myself, but like, what am I experiencing? How's my body showing up? How's my mind showing up? And it, you know, it goes back to that reframe, reprocess, repurpose to restore back to what you've been created to be. That I believe that, Adam, you were born to live life a certain way and impact it in this way, right? And myself included and anybody else watching this. That's what I believe at the core. You were created for a purpose, but you're seeing it through a lens that has all this history behind you and all these negative interactions and all these positive interactions. All, you know, it's I said negative at the beginning because that's a lot of how we look at it. Yeah. Right. And so if we can see it differently, if we can visually see things differently, then we can we can reprocess our mind to think it and experience it differently. Right. So then that way we're repurposing our lives, not for being reactive, but for being what we've always been created to be, to the repurpose process. And so it's like, okay, I'm going to repurpose my life so that way I can restore back to the way when I was a kid, I was running around, I was having happy, I was in this relationship, that relationship, just playing ball or sports or, out on the farm, whatever it looks like when I was at my happiest point, when I was interacting and engaging with people, what did that look like? You can still do that as an adult. I think when we stop caring about what others think of us and we just live as we were created to live, it takes a ton, an immense amount of pressure off of our shoulders. That heavy weight that lives on our chest is just, so light, so freeing. And it just allows us to be in it. It is really, sometimes we just put all these external stressors on ourselves. And it's like going back to the gazelle, like just kind of like, okay, going through the day. Like, don't run away, just be present, continue to show up and do what that we were created to do. And, own the things we need to own. Like, if we make a mistake or we say something silly, own it. Like, when we feel like we're becoming more defensive and less engaged and project more, okay, what's going on? Asking the question, okay, what's going on? It'd be a little, it's not so easy to get along with the spouse that day. Okay, what's going on? Is it me or is it her? Or is it both? And then what do I need to do to change the interaction? Because I love her, I care about her, I care about him, I love him. How do I do that?
And
what does that look like?
Does she need some grace?
Yeah,
because I know that sometimes sometimes every day I need grace. I know that.
And so, every day, yeah.
And I loved how you bring in that defensiveness aspect, because again, I know right now everyone's focused on how we make the most money. Well, how about this other side? Have you ever met someone that you've done business with, and when you ask them about something because there was a miscommunication, there was a fault, and that person got defensive, that you somehow were calm, that you got peace out of it? No. And it's the same thing. So again, if I'm getting defensive when my wife asks a question because maybe I was a jerk, and then guess what? I'm going to translate that into business too. And when the boss comes by, there's two ways to go down. You can go ahead and make excuses and start to tarnish your name, or you can own it up. I made a mistake. I should have done this. I didn't do that. Well, you don't want to do that. Trust me. Then we start getting into the den of thieves. People build the relationships they want around them. If your relationships that are around you in the business world is, I can't tell the truth, I can't admit to failure, and trust no one, then good luck. Because essentially, you're in a hitman world where you're going to just do well till someone slits your throat. And it's the truth. And people have gotten into business and they've accepted that. You can be something different. And if you create opportunity for something different, trust me, there are people out there that appreciate those qualities. Absolutely. That tile didn't come in because blank happened. Whatever happened. But I guarantee you will get more people to trust you by telling the truth versus you trying to conceal. And guess what? I don't bring stress home with me when I'm honest with my customers, my clients, people I do business with. But when I come home and I've had to conceal something, I've had to lie, and then guess what? I got to spend all that energy remembering the lie, remembering what I told this person, how it was different from that person, and hoping they never talk. I don't have the time to do that. There are 24 hours in this day. I want to be present with my family more than I have to be present with my lies.
And that's the heaviness of carrying all that baggage around. And when we look at ourselves in a positive way and we're happy with who we are and how we show up, you don't have to carry that stuff around. You recognize I don't have to lie. I'm going to show up how I was created to show up, and that's who I'm going to be. Now I'm going to be that person at work. I'm going to be that person in the community. I'm going to be the person at home. And it's very transparent in every relationship that you have. You carry it and you wear it, and that's who you are. And you don't have to do anything outside of yourself to gain external validation. Everything you described, it's like you're looking for that external validation to give yourself some sort of, validity to what you're doing and why you're doing it. It has nothing to do with that. It's like you show up, who that person that you know, and the ones that are on that lying and cheating and doing that stuff, they're the ones, in my opinion, they don't know who they are. And so they're just doing and doing and doing and doing. And they never stop doing. And then they're just in that cycle, like you're talking about. It's like, you got to remember this, got to remember that. It's a lot of stress, a lot of pressure. When you show up and you're authentic and you use that V word, vulnerable. And, when you do that, things change, because then people look at you, differently. They know that the expectations of you kind of increase. I mean, you set boundaries on those, limit, how you can show up, but they're going to know you're authentic and they can trust you, right? Back to your word of trust. And trust is huge. It's not, it's not just your word, but it's everybody's word. Like, once we have trust with someone, like, so my wife and I went back to Tennessee, because that's where we're going to end up living here in the sometime of 2021. And I love the interaction with the people, and one in particular, one of the contractors that my brother and sister-in-law are working with, and he's authentic. That guy's authentic. Like, he gets it. Like, he's born and raised in Tennessee, like in the rural areas of Tennessee. And it's like, he's genuine. He has fun. You can talking to him, and you can just tell that he has this value of life, and the relationships that he creates and cultivates. Because the relationship that he has with my brother and sister-in-law is relatively new. And from what I heard, he doesn't just build a house for anybody. It's like he has to talk to you. It's almost like an interview process, and if you pass the process, but that's somebody who knows who he is. He knows what value he brings, and he doesn't just take on projects to make the money. Like, yeah, he's gonna help his family and provide for his family through doing certain services, but that's not why he does it. He shows up, he has a relationship with people, and then, okay, I'll do that for you, and he maintains that. And
and there's an integrity in the fact that he knows that, guess what, I'm not going to be your cup of tea. Some people, it's just not going to jive. Yeah. He knows what he can bring to the table, what he can do. And so I'm sure if someone starts talking about things that they need built that he doesn't have expertise in, then it's like, you know what? It's easier for me to tell you that's not something that's my skill set.
Right.
Here's some referrals and move on. Yeah. Better than me take your money and not be able to meet your expectation.
Yeah.
And so, especially when we look at just, it seems like, at least for the millennial generation, I'm a millennial, we sort of started looking at people as disposable. And this can be something that we can talk about in a different podcast, but I'm going to just drop a little bit of a dime on you right now, which is whenever we think, when we see someone as that's a means of me getting something for myself, we are setting ourselves up for a hellish relational setting, because then all I'm doing is I'm just consuming, dropping, moving on. And what ends up happening is enough people start deeming you an unsafe individual, and then guess what? No one's going to do business with you. Then no one's going to want to hire you, because you've created this reputation of, the means justify the end. And that's what my heart is pouring out into this podcast, is I don't want that for people. I've seen it happen to people.
Yeah.
That when I was sitting at that funeral and realizing that I had had a completely different lived experience with this gentleman than his child did, I went, oh no. I'm sure I'm very appreciative of everything that gentleman did for me, but that moment was the most powerful gift he could have given me, is the idea of like, no, I want my kid to be able to get up and speak at my funeral if they choose, or more importantly, hear these stories and laugh and say, yeah, that was my dad. Because if they can't say that, then I failed. And money comes and goes. Memories, love, and affection does not. And anyone who has lost a family member who truly poured into their lives, my grandmother was a huge source for me. I mean, I can't tell you how many times driving down the road, especially now that I'm in Tennessee. She lived in a rural area of California, but I'll drive down the road and there's a road back here, Spring Hill shout out. that this little house has a bunch of miniature ponies, and that's what my grandmother used to raise. She was a breeder. And, just driving through and just having those moments hit you of those blessings that she poured time into me instead of money. Money's easy. You can set it in a card. Your time, invaluable. And this is what we're looking at. Because I'm telling you, as Jeff told me a long time ago, we'll have to get to the Starbucks conversation one day, Jeff. But a long time ago, Jeff, we were wrestling with how do we build these individual lives for our families? How do we do better? And Jeff threw it out there. The money is always going to be out there. It's how you get to it. And he was prophetic because he saw it. You get to it through people. It's not a bank heist. It's not buying money in stocks. It's you got to get to it through people. If you don't know how to get to people and be relational and to have connection, you will not get to money.
That's right. That's right. It was a powerful conversation, but it is true. And it's connection to people to change the world, right? And then there's value in that. Oh, by the way, this is how much you charge, and it's exactly. But it's really that. Like, you could ask my wife. I don't care about the money. I don't care what we have. Like, I just want to provide for her and give her the best I could possibly give her, and my kids the same, right? But I don't. It's so different because there was a time in my life where I did care about that, and as I matured and go through a divorce, and that things change and perspectives change and views of life change. I'm like, I don't care. Like I don't even care who knows me, because the people that know me are going to know that, oh man, he was used to help me, kind of figure some things out. Right. That's how and see life differently and experience life differently. Like that's how he was used in my life. And that's all I want. I don't care how many people know who I am. Like, I think because of my servant heart, like I think it would be good, because then I'm able to touch a lot of people and help facilitate a lot of people through this. And so that's good. That'll speak to the process of changing the world. But yes, like so many people are like, how do I get this? How do I get that? Well, it's always through relationships and how you show up, and it has, having finished grad school and trying to figure out how to switch out of this field and into this one, and what does that look like? And there's always a lot of questions. And it's like, how am I going to provide for the family? Well, sometimes we don't have 100% control of that. But what we do have control over is how we show up to the world and how we present that to people and how we have relationships with people. And this interaction, that interaction, people, what's that great saying? People don't know, may not always remember certain things, but they always remember how you feel, like how you made them feel. Yeah. Right? They may not always remember what you said, but they always remember how you made them feel, right? Something to that extent.
Yep.
And that's true, because you think about some of the most important and significant people in your life, those relationships. I'm like, I may not always remember the content of what exactly specifically they said, but I knew when I was with them, oh my God, when I was important, I was valuable, and I was cared for. Like that's how I want to show up to the world. That's exactly how, if we're around each other, I don't want you to think of like, oh, he didn't have any time for me, or he didn't really talk to me, or he didn't, he just seemed like a jerk. And trust me, I'm still a human being, and sometimes I get hungry, and I get moody, and that sort of thing.
Jeff can be an ass. He can.
I try to be one, very, very few and in between. But everybody has it, right? So it's really recognizing, okay, like how do you show up, and how you engage people. And then, the money, in my opinion, the money should be the last thing you're worried about, because that'll take care of itself when you do all the other things the way that you were designed to do, right? And it's getting back to restoring you to be that people person, that loving person, that caring person, that person that trusts himself, herself, to be able to trust others. And then people are like, I can't trust that person. I said, good, don't trust them. But do you trust you to trust them? And then that is like, it's a mind-blowing thing, because it's like, wait, I see where you're getting at. It's just really figuring out, okay, what about you, how you show up, how you trust, how you love, how you connect, right? And so because people at times are, I don't know about that guy, or I don't know about that girl. I was like, Okay, that's cool. That gets back to what you were talking about, that gut intuition. Okay, maybe you set a healthy boundary between you and them. You don't have to pour your whole life into them. That's okay. Maybe they're not ready for that. And so you
Absolutely.
look for the ones that are ready. Look for the ones that you're more aligned with, that you're more alike, that you feel like one you can grow into, like you can pour into, and then on the flip side, maybe you can get some out of it. And there might be relationships that you're just constantly pouring into, mentoring and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
But then also there's other relationships that you're learning and you're growing from them, and figuring out how that relationship impacts you. All about growing bigger.
Yep.
And being able to do it on a platform that just really allows you to be who, in my opinion, you always created to be. Nobody, like you said, nobody sets out to cheat and just be destructive and tear their lives apart. Nobody does, right?
Nope.
And after working with kids for a period of time, you realize that, man, the cards they've been dealt are not fair. And I know that there are people who are going to be watching this video, listening to this podcast. The cards you have been dealt are not fair. I get it. But here you are today. You've gotten to this point as an adult, and you've done some things that have been successful. Are you happy being who you are and how you're showing up? If you're not, we can definitely help with that. We can definitely come alongside you and navigate that road and change the way you see it, the way you experience it, and just repurpose your life so that way you are restored back to what you've always been before any of that stuff started. That bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, that kid that was so excited. I always think Disneyland, because we grew up here in Orange County, right? So I always think about Disneyland and, that the experience of Disneyland. Even when I worked there, it's like you create an experience, and it's like it's the happiest place on earth. That's how kids enjoy that place. Like, I mean, some kids, have hard times throughout the day, but it's a lot. But everybody, you think about Disneyland, it's like, oh, Mickey and these rides and the colors and the music and the smells, and it's like that. Just living life where you are making an impact and you're enjoying the environment you're in. And if you're not in an environment that you can't enjoy, you got to change it up. Yeah. You have to change it up.
You need to start listening to your soul, listening to yourself.
Yeah.
So if you're saying, I relationally feel like I'm dying in this place, I don't like the people I go to work with, I don't like my job, you have got to pick up the pieces. And it's rough and it's vulnerable, and I get it. The economy's a wreck. It's a pandemic. Yeah. Well, then fine. There's plenty other aspects of you have time, probably in other ways. Maybe find a different job, maybe invest in yourself to where maybe you will be ready for a career change. Read some books. You quoted one book that we should probably just drop on them, which is The Body Keeps the Score, an amazing book. Yep, because this goes back to, okay, just because I can think I can hold the trauma, I can hold the stress, I can hold the anxiety, you can for a while, but you're going to break down, and the body doesn't forget. And just like what Jeff was saying a moment ago, the relationship styles we have, whether it's in business or it's in our home, sometimes we forget they were passed down from our parents, or it's passed down from their parents. And we have this intergenerational trauma of, hold it, some person had this crazy experience in their life, and they started to see life through a certain lens, and they started to essentially close the world in, removed opportunities, brought my scope down smaller and smaller. This is my only options. This is all I got. And I passed that on to my children. And so what did my children do? They take this and they make it smaller. And then before you know it, I have been relationally, I've had this intergenerational transmission of fear, anxiety, worry. Don't think very small, very big. Don't try to find what that purpose is in my life. Go safe, go conservative, do whatever it might be, because you just want to make sure you have enough money coming in. And we forget that even this thing pops back to our relation with money and how we see it. And so that is definitely one of the next podcasts that Jeff and I are going to pull apart, is is going, okay, are your expectations, are your goals for yourself your own? Or is someone else holding that pen to your life story? Is someone else telling you what your expectations are for yourself, what you should achieve? Because guess what? You're the one that's going to have to wrestle with it at the end of the road. Did I do what brought me joy? And, I love it because Jeff always reframes me, pulls me back out of that money idea real quick, and then throws me back into it's making an impact, right? Let's not forget that there's dog walkers in New York that make $200,000 a year. Dog walkers. But they found their impact,
That's right. That's
and
right.
And so it can be found in anything.
Yeah, it truly can.
But more importantly, it's hard to find money when you're not being authentic to yourself and you're not fulfilling your passions. Because then it's just a job, and no one wants a crappy job.
It's not fun. It's
just
not fun. It's not fun. I mean, we love what we do. Like, we enjoy helping people. We love doing this and the podcast. Like, we're not making money on this. We're just putting content out there so it's available, and perhaps this, would lead to, possibly working with you, or if not us, man, we know we're connected with a lot of people. Like, it's a no-brainer, but it's the opportunities there for you because we enjoy what we do. Like, we know we've been called to this field, and we know we've been called to change lives and help people through the difficulties that life brings. And that's how we show up. And we get to provide a living for our family. That's just one of the rewards from it. Right. And so that's how we look at it. And so whether you're a dog walker, whether you're a therapist, whether you are a farmer, a businessman, whatever it is, whatever it comes out to, it's you making the impact. You making the impact. And how are you showing up to the world to help shape it or change it in a positive way? Like, I'm a pretty positive guy, so you're going to hear me say that time and time again. It's like, how are you showing up? So that way your family gets the best of you. So that way the community gets the best of you. So that way coworkers and colleagues get the best of you. Like, don't hide that part. Don't be afraid to show up and, be goofy and have a good time. Like, I'm goofy and have a good time, but there was a period in my life I was like, I can't be goofy. I can't show that.
And you were miserable, and people were not drawn to you.
Yes.
Because they're like, man, that guy just he's got a funk about him. Why? Because you wanted to joke. You wanted to be you. Yeah. And instead you put on this mask that didn't fit.
Yeah. Yeah. That internal conflict, right? And so it's really getting back to, and it goes back to restoring that individual that was always there underneath the surface that you wanted to show up as, but you just didn't because you're afraid of what other people thought. Or like you said, somebody else is holding the pen to write your story. And it's like, no, take it back. And it's like, okay, let's figure out who you are.
Well, we're going to have to put the kibosh on this because we've talked to him for an hour and 15 minutes. So we got to slow this. We got to slow this down.
Our bad. We try to keep the hour.
We hit a wind and we went with it. So if you got to break this podcast up, please do. We understand. But this is where we're at, guys, gals. It's looking at this from the relational aspect. And so we will be bringing you another podcast next week. We hope that you have a wonderful Thanksgiving. We hope that tomorrow, because it's going to be Thursday, that you're able to actually sit with your family and you're able to be present the best you can. If you need to leave your phone at home, leave it at home. If you need to turn off the work computer, turn off the work computer. Trust me that in 8 hours of just spending time devoted to your family and those relationships, you will feel recharged. You will have different experiences. And trust me, there's nothing that can be on your phone or your computer from a work perspective that should give you the same joy as being with your family. So, as always, thank you so much for listening to Southern Connection. This is the Relational Experts. We're getting out of here.
God bless you guys.
God bless. See you guys.